I am excited to be with you today, Dr. Jennifer Wong. Thank you for role modeling for us today for WeCan. We are going to talk about your story and how you got to where you are today. And we will speak about your experiences and insights around transforming how society views and accommodates older adults and advocating for more inclusivity, age inclusivity. You are currently the executive director at the Life Story Club, expanding your organization's innovative model to reach more isolated members in New York City. You're building a network that uplifts older people. And before that, you served as the inaugural director of the Wallace Annenberg Gen Space in Los Angeles. It's a groundbreaking community center designed for older adults. You know what it looks like to build age-appropriate and age-inclusive spaces, Jennifer, and you helped shape California's master plan on aging and developed aging and disability healthcare policies at all levels. Jennifer, welcome to WeCan and thank you for being here. Talk to us a little bit about what matters to you most and how you want to matter with the work that you do.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm delighted to share that community matters most to me. It always has. We know that community, both online and in person, are ways that we feel like we belong, that we feel valued, that we feel seen, that we feel heard. And to me, it's what our world is missing right now. Um, I think not just in the United States, but across the globe, I think we're watching what it means to kind of live in the in-between of community, both online and in person. And I think if there's a way that we can marry the two experiences together, we can have a really beautiful showing of what humanity and what community can do. Um, I was thinking about the New York Marathon and thinking about the ways in which it's the perfect display of community at its finest.
Mm.
We see, or you either cheer for, or you see online, or you see while crossing the street that there are thousands of folks running the New York Marathon, both from New York City, around New York City, or around the globe, with friends and family and also absolute strangers cheering for them.
Yeah.
And you see that they are in that they need the community, that the community helps them run. The community helps them if they need a Band-Aid or a glass of water or a snack or an alcoholic shot, whatever keeps them going. There is an option for everybody, and everyone kind of brings their gifts and talents and cowbells and signs to the route to cheer them on. And it's so important. And I like to think that while it's not every week or every day that we can shut down New York City and display such a beautiful um, display of community, I think that we can do some sort of community building and showing up to community in various ways, whether it's, letting someone cut in front of you on a line or giving up your seat on the subway or checking in on a friend or knocking on your neighbor's door and asking them if they need anything. I think that we're all looking for ways that we can show up safely and securely, and that I think that is what this dovetails really nicely with what I want to be doing in the world, and the work that I do is by building community. I think it's really important, and I think that we need architects of community, and we need ways that people can show up. Um, when they're having really good and enjoyable days and when they're having not so good or not enjoyable days. And I think we need architects of these social spaces, whether it's in religious communities, at work communities, in our neighborhoods. We need these architects to be creating communities for everybody. And as many people as there are in the world, that's sometimes as many as communities that we need. And so there's a not one size fits all, and we need a lot of different options to accommodate our friends and neighbors.
Jennifer, and you are an architect of age inclusive spaces. So talk to us about that work that's important to you, and talk to us about the Life Story Club and how do you create those spaces?
Sure. So I will also weave in how I got here because I
Mm,
recognize many of your listeners might not know, but I'm a 38-year-old woman who has been creating age-friendly spaces for over a decade. And I really started this work by studying how people lived long term with physical and cognitive disabilities and what we needed in healthcare systems and in social supports to support them so that they could be engaged in community because we know that they have the best physical and cognitive outcomes when they're engaged in their community. So that's why it was
yeah.
so important. So now I'm on the other side and I am creating these spaces for older adults. And at the Life Story Club, we create these by gathering a group of older adults, usually referred to us by either physicians or medical professionals, caseworkers, community centers, religious institutions. So we have kind of like a referral, a warm referral coming in that says, I think this older adult would benefit from joining one of your story clubs. And our story clubs are a group of elders, somewhere between 8 and 12 people that gather each week
Mhm.
and we try and match them according to neighborhood because I think it's a really easy way um, to feel like you belong and to
Yeah.
get together and to have something to talk about and familiarity that way, and then also across language. So we offer our life story clubs in English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Cantonese right now, and we're hoping to
Amazing.
grow into other languages like
Mhm.
Polish and Hebrew and Creole. And so right now our old our older adults, our older storytellers get to share their life stories. And it could be things from their past. It can also be their life experiences from today, but also hopes and dreams for the future. And I think that this is really important because we're not just having elders um, relive their glory days because, so much of their life is also about what's happening every single day and also what's going to happen in the future. So
Yeah.
we learn a lot from them and we love to get them together and share these stories. So they are meeting on Zoom or by phone each week, and
Mhm.
then we try and get them together in person because we know that when they get together in person, they deepen the bonds that they've been growing virtually or distantly, and that's really important. And so going back to being an architect of this means that each community and each group is a little bit different. What they want to share or talk about is sometimes different. So you can't just have one story prompt for 30 clubs each week because not every club is going to
Yeah.
jive the same way or contribute the same way. And then also, not every in-person gathering, we can't just do one big gathering because certain groups need different gathering opportunities. Some are highly mobile, really really engaged folks with their communities. So they're happy to meet up anywhere and anyhow and on any different day. And then other groups may need a little bit more accessibility support. We have a
Mhm.
number of storytellers that are visually impaired or hard of hearing or use mobility devices. And so we're constantly thinking about really creative ways that they can have a similar experience to our different story clubs that are gathering together also. So that is kind of what I'm creating right now. And I think it goes to show just how important community is because we've reached thousands of New Yorkers and we can't wait to continue to grow. We also know that social isolation and loneliness impacts older adults' health in a variety of ways. So this is just one opportunity and one solution to tackle an ever-growing problem.
Yeah, and an ever-growing problem that's really costing our society a lot, both in terms of dollars and also in terms of just the well-being of our societies, right?
Yeah.
Jennifer, so how can we as a global society build more age-inclusive spaces, do you think?
I always encourage people to get curious about aging.
Mm,
I think one of the things that is missing in our modern society is the way in which we treat and include or not include, exclude our elders in everyday life. So whether it's sporting events or education or community gatherings. I think we don't do a great job of creating age-friendly spaces across the board, whether that's seating options or ability to have different visual options. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. We are age siloing ourselves in ways that make it really tricky to reintegrate later, especially
mm,
across workplaces. So for me, I think that inviting elders to spaces that they might not normally join you is really important. I live next to a 92-year-old woman who so I live in a small apartment complex with about ten apartments, and I would say each of our neighbors do a different thing with her.
mm,
So one of our neighbors takes her to the farmer's market. Now, if it was up to her, she wouldn't be going to the farmer's market each week or when she can every other week, but because of our neighbor, she can go. Others do. I walk the grocery store aisles with her. She's a really great shopper. And others do different things. They play with their dogs with her. They incorporate her in different ways in our community. And I keep thinking that that is a really good model for how we should treat everyone in our communities and what that should look like. It's not easy, and I'm gonna say that. It's not easy, but as you said, it is costly. So by not including our older adults, we further ostracize them, we further separate them, we give them more distance to our communities. And by doing that, their health suffers. So on an individual level, health suffers. And on a community level, I also think we suffer, as you mentioned. Um, so we know that loneliness and social isolation is related to, increases in cognitive disability.
yeah,
So things like dementia and Alzheimer's, those things happen. Cardiovascular health, so high risk of cardiovascular health, also depression and anxiety, which we know leads to a whole bunch of other things, including suicide ideation. Um, so that's problematic. And then as a society, I think we are fooling ourselves if we don't think that someday we might be an older adult. That might not be everyone's plan or in the cards for everyone, but I think many of us are interested in living a long life. And so if we continue to age silo folks, we will find ourselves ostracized and separated from communities that we have built before and that younger people will continue building. And I just don't think that that's a society that any of us want to live in. And so
yeah,
I say, get curious about older adults, understand their wants and needs and preferences and interests and delights, and also pain points so that we can create a community and society where everyone is included so that someday when each of us is an elder, we'll be included, as I think we all want to be.
definitely. What a beautiful story about your neighbor. And I think how is that so different to most people who don't even know who their neighbors are anymore? So I think we sometimes need to start just to even know who our neighbors are. And then I feel
Yeah.
there are some beautiful projects all around the world. Like the Netherlands has old people's homes that also are nursery schools. So
Yes.
you have a bit sort of like a whole legion of grandparents to young children, and they do activities with them. And it's not only beneficial to the elders, but also to the children who attend the nursery school. Or I think again in the Netherlands, they have students who can have reduced rates at people's apartments to also look after older people. So you have a very reduced rate for also looking after them, or often looking after them is literally just doing some shopping with them or for them. And, it's very, they're still independent living elders. So I think there
Yeah.
is a lot of amazing projects around the world. Are there any projects that you have maybe also been involved with that you felt this is really crucial for us to bring about change and make spaces more age inclusive? And of course, the Life Story Club and what you do with it is one of them. What other initiatives do you feel we need a lot more of?
Yes. So I love the Netherlands options of co-housing, and yes, the co-learning opportunity and social engagement. Um, I have been thinking partially for Life Story Club as we just hosted our first intergenerational event where we invited our storytellers and members of the community to do a sort of exercise called speed connecting. It was a take on speed dating where you have opportunities to share stories and connect with each other, but many. So you move
Hmm.
along
Hmm. Hmm.
we had an outdoor event. So, but among the tables. Um, and I have been thinking about what this might look like on a broader scale. At GenSpace, we created a lot of intergenerational opportunities. You don't get the name GenSpace without thinking about generations. So as we were building, we partnered juniors and seniors from a local high school, shout out Loyola High School, a wonderful Jesuit school with our elders in our community, and we set them up for one-on-one conversations, like friendly visiting conversations, which is a well-known, um, very well done program across many different nonprofits and institutions, as well as learning communities. So that's one option. And then we also had kind of similar to the Netherlands, we had preschool students come and join our elders to create art and create music. And then we also had sixth and seventh graders also do the same. So trying to have those opportunities where we can join folks together. And that sort of goes back to what we need to build, being the architect. And so creating a space where older adults and young people are not so far apart. So, everyone was on one campus. We just had to invite them into our space
Mm.
and create opportunities for that was one. And then also having instructors who were really comfortable talking and encouraging connections across generations. So you didn't just have older adults on one side and younger people on the other. It was really a co experience. And then also as I think about sometimes friendly visiting programs or volunteer opportunities become really one-sided, where the young person helps the elder. And it's just kind of like unidirectional, just one direction of like help or support or whichever. But I think we often discount the ways in which elders can also help young people.
Definitely.
We see this sometimes in our story clubs where a facilitator is grappling with a life change or an experience, and they can kind of call upon their elders to give them some really good information. One of my favorite stories is from one of our facilitators, Esther, who had this really great opportunity to go on vacation with a bunch of friends, and one by one, each one kind of backed out. And she was like, do I go on this vacation that I had obviously envisioned being with a community, or do I go by myself? And
Mm.
so she asked one of her clubs, tell me a story about a time where you had to go alone, where you had to do something that you didn't think you had to do alone, but that you had the chance to do. And she heard a really lovely story from one of our storytellers, Maryland, who was like, I've always wanted to go to I think it was the opera or the ballet. I can't remember which, but she was like, I really wanted to go for years and years and years. And I always asked friends if they would go with me, and they never did. So on her 80th birthday, she dressed up very beautifully. She pretty much looked like Cinderella. And she went by herself. And it was the most wonderful and engaging experience. And she was able to be in community of other people who loved the arts as much as she did. And she got to step outside of one community and enter into another. So,
Mm,
um, they're really great examples of how older adults and young people can come together and how we can create tighter communities across the globe. And what I love is there's no one prescription on how this works.
mm,
I think we get inspiration from other countries and other cultures. And obviously, as intergenerational and and multiracial and multicultural as certain countries are becoming or have been for a long time, there's a lot of opportunities to see what works.
yeah. And I often think, Jennifer, why can't we look at all the communities we already have? And you mentioned them. There could be a church, that could be a club, that could be a tennis club, a school, a university, a company, and just
Uh,
think, how can we bring all the different age groups together, and what can we do in order to reach out if we don't have the balance, right? And bring then younger or older people into the mix, because when you co-create as people, that's when we get such beautiful outcomes and each person learns. Jennifer,
yes.
I'm wondering, tell us a bit more about that story. How do you, as a woman in her prime, you know, work so much for the elders? How did that come about?
I often credit my mother. My mother is an incredible woman who has always sort of been of service to others. She was a trained nurse and a nursing professor. She's a really active member of our United Methodist Church community and always sat on the health ministry, which meant sometimes supporting the elders in the church. So I sort of have always been surrounded um, by people and folks who really care about their community. And my mom
Mm,
is probably my
wonderful.
biggest influence there. She's such a community builder, and she does it so naturally. Whether it's, giving rides to somebody who no longer drives, or bringing over meals after somebody's home from a hospital stay. There's always ways to serve your community. And what I love is that she was always both the hands and the feet of what community meant for us. And it could have just been a phone call. It could be any of those things. So I credit her, but I really got curious about what was happening in older adulthood throughout my career in academia. I'm an experimental psychologist by
Mhm.
training. I went to lots and lots and lots of school. Earning a PhD and doing several fellowships just in figuring out how our human brains work, and then how the built environment and the social environment impacts how we show up in the world. Um, and so that really led me to this creation of how we do this and how we optimize this to be as welcoming and accessible as possible.
Mm,
And knowing that when we do this for our most vulnerable, we often include many others and what that looks like. And we see it in policy work all the time. One of my favorite things that I think about is how wheelchair users and mothers with strollers teamed up to advocate for curb cuts everywhere.
mm,
If you're navigating a curb with a wheelchair, it's really hard and
yeah.
really complicated. As it is with a stroller. And so you had two very different populations that came together and needed the built environment to be more welcoming and more friendly and more accessible to them. And as such, we get young people and older adults who can move around our communities and our neighborhoods so much easier.
Easier.
So I think about things like that that really inspire me to think about ways that aren't already out there in our policy or aren't already out there in our social supports or in our offerings to communities. And I try to think about likely pairings. At Life Story Club, we have partnered with one of our largest partner is City Meals,
Yeah.
who deliver meals to older adults, mostly homebound older adults across all 5 boroughs and across many different languages. And so they serve many different culturally appropriate meals to the different populations. And they did a research study a couple of years, I think in 2024, that asked their meal recipients what their biggest challenges were. Did they need more food? Did they need more social engagement? What did they need more access to health care? What were their biggest challenges? And 22,000 older adults reported that they were lonely and isolated. And so we teamed up with them. Now we don't have 22,000 seats yet, but it is my goal. But we teamed up with them to offer Life Story Club to their home delivered meal recipients, knowing that if we pair meals with social engagement, we can really cover serving the entire person.
Yeah.
And that this was a really wonderful investment in health in our communities. So creating these opportunities is really important to me. I think food is such a natural progression to social connection. We think about sharing s'mores around a campfire or sharing a meal, whether it's a holiday or just, the kitchen table with your family and friends, breaking bread together.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is the perfect pairing for Life Story Club. And I think it's the perfect model to kind of expand because we know that our meal delivery systems are often serving people in our community that are the most isolated and
Yeah.
don't have options to be out in community. So how great is it that we get to bring community to them?
Yeah. Amazing. Jennifer, so what does success look like for you?
Um, for me as a person, it looks like creating communities so that everyone in our neighborhoods has a place to belong.
Mm.
Um, it might not just be social clubs for storytelling. It might be something else. But I just want to continue to invest in community building. I think it's going to be more important now than ever before as we're on the rise of digital age and our work and our social lives are a little bit and dating are a little
Mm.
bit estranged from one another and experiences, and we're spending more and more time in our individualized algorithms that serve us what we think is important, but we're really missing community experiences and activations that bring us close together. So I've been thinking a lot about this. Um, and also thinking about ways that we can get everyone involved, whether it's restaurant owners or schools, or small business owners, because everyone has a role to play in community building, and a tight-knit community benefits everyone, both emotionally and physically, but also financially. And so I've been thinking a lot about that as we see a lot of storefronts closing and other things happening in our communities.
Mm.
Um, for Life Story Club, it's really simple. We need a seat for every older adult who wants one. And so it's my goal to share as much about what we're doing with Life Story Club with everyone. Whenever I share about Life Story Club, may it be something as beautiful and eloquent as being a guest with you on your beautiful show, or it's sharing with someone who I'm sitting next to, at a conference or on the bus. Um, Everyone can think of an older adult who would benefit from this. I
Yeah.
have not talked to one person who hasn't been like, oh, my mom, my grandmother, my neighbor, my friend. Um, I have not at all ever experienced somebody who's like, that's a weird idea. Why would you do that? It's always, oh, here's the name and number of somebody who I think could benefit. Do you think
Mm,
you could call them and offer it?
mm.
Um, and so I know we're on the road to doing exactly that, which is creating a seat for everybody who needs it. And I know we're only one solution to this big problem, and that we need many solutions, whether it's one-on-one community building or it's community building around a different thing, like we talked about, religion or a book club or other or an activity. Storytelling is just one part, but I think it's a really important part, and it's a really natural part to do oral history. It's a part of our nature. And so I'm really excited to keep building on that goal, both in New York and beyond.
Jennifer, so if you had like a megaphone that reaches all the 7 billion people of this planet Earth, what would be the one message that you would like to give everyone?
Mm. I think be more inclusive. I think one of the things that we're really seeing is by being less inclusive and being more exclusive that we're alienating and ostracizing our elders. Um, and I think someday we're gonna the young people among us, we're gonna find ourselves on that outside. And it's not gonna feel great. It doesn't look great for me for now. We can see what older adulthood looks like. And so I think if we can be more inclusive, we'll all be in better shape either today
Definitely.
or tomorrow. Yeah.
Definitely. Jennifer, and how strange is it that the person I interviewed before you is a young man who is an incredible guy and he advocates for children, so young people, to sit at all the decision-making tables that we have around the world. So I always think it's upwards and downwards, as in it's really the
100%.
young people of this world that I think are quite isolated because of social media, because of the structures that we build. And it's the same for old people. So there's only seems to be a sort of middle bit where, we might be more connected. But even that I sometimes doubt
I
because
agree.
because of the world post-COVID that we have created. And so I love what you said with that message because it really is just for everyone to have a good look around. How did you set up your life and how can you include more people? Young people, older people,
Yes.
who are your neighbors? How can you do that tiny little bit of paying rent on this in this beautiful world that will help or support somebody else?
Yes, I imagine a really big table with everyone around it. I think that there's nothing nothing more important than that. And I think also when we're making decisions about young people and older adults or anyone, everyone should sit at the table. Everything impacts us. We invest and grow and support our young people so one day they are well-adjusted, financially
Mm.
secure, happy community members in our world. And we hope that they are also living a long life. And that's why we do such a great job of investing in young people, but we also don't do a great job of listening to their wants and needs. And I think it goes across the spectrum. So we can all do a better job of that. And I'm so lucky to be in rooms and in spaces where there are people who believe just that.
Mm, exactly. Jennifer, so as you have so much insight, also academic insight into the psychology of people, what tip do you think you could give for us to just feel a bit more connected?
I don't think it has to be a big thing. I think
Mm,
we need to start small.
yeah.
I have been thinking about this, and there's a movement, or there was a movement a couple of years ago about like we've been missing small favors, like the act of trading small favors. Um, And I think a lot of us want to be a part of communities and get the benefits from communities, but we are missing the act of giving to communities, and giving without immediate reward is a little bit hard. But we've moved, but one of the easiest ways to build community is the act of small favors. So I mentioned earlier, right, like bringing my neighbor to the grocery store. We have monetized a lot of weird things that I think I agree with you that are carryover from COVID. Before COVID, I probably never had meals delivered, unless it was like I was getting together with like a really big group of friends and we needed like some catering options or something from
Yeah.
the local spot. Um, I actually have not, I probably use a meal delivery service no more than 3 times a year. In 2022, I decided that there was no more meal delivery for me, and that I could, it's not that I can't order in advance and drive to go pick it up and get delivery or takeout, but it will no longer be driven to me. Because by me not going in my community, that only hurts me.
Mm.
And so I've been thinking about that. It's also trips to drop off friends to the airport. It's also asking your friend if they need anything from the store. It's also going to somebody's home and sitting on their couch when they've had a bad day and not like meeting out at a restaurant.
Yeah.
Um, I think we've forgotten how to be in community. And
Mm.
so I offer, think about a small favor. Currently, I have a friend who's staying in my apartment when I and am out on work trips. As they are looking for a new apartment and are going through this really big transition of uncoupling in their life. That's a small favor. And instead of like they could have gotten a hotel room, right? But it's inviting them into the community that they're already a part of. They already live in my neighborhood, so it's really easy to keep them in community. So I think this is my suggestion. Don't think so big. You don't have to join a knitting club or start a club or do anything wild. It's kind of like just being a good friend. Be a good friend and be a good friend in the community. I think it'll go a really long way.
Right. I love that idea of a small favor. And that's something everyone can do. Jennifer,
Yeah.
so what are your plans and goals? Where do you see yourself heading?
I still am just really into the community building. I think across the board, I have been thinking a lot about here in the United States, we have some really big events coming up. We're
Mm.
hosts of the World Cup. Los Angeles is also host to LA 28 for the Olympics, but also it'll be in other cities around the United States. And I've been thinking about how those opportunities are primed to be more inclusive.
Mm.
And oftentimes when we build for these big events, we actually build for decades later in many different areas in Atlanta, in New York and New Jersey, in LA, in Kansas City. We've created these spaces that actually serve the community for decades afterwards. In Los Angeles, there's a LA Coliseum, which is really famous that people have been a part of, and many sporting events have been used for. And so I've been thinking about how we need to be careful about how we create these built environments and also social environments around this. It's also opportunities to build public transportation and housing. We've seen how Olympic villages then get used where they house athletes, then get used to house others. Maybe it's affordable housing or senior housing. So this is where I'm really dialed into right now. So if you're creating or building those spaces, I'd love to chat. But I have been thinking about how we use these other opportunities to be more inclusive to our elders and to all of our community members. Because again, we know that we need to create it for decades to come. So really, I'm thinking about what will Gen Z want as an older adult,
Mm, yeah.
which is kind of very different from the silent generation, the baby boomers, the Gen X's, the millennials, what we'll want in a community. So this is what I'm thinking right now. And I've been thinking about it for a long time. And then again, we just know that we need a lot of different opportunities for older adults to stay engaged and connected to their communities. So how do we do that? And I think we're building something really special at Life Story Club by doing virtual and phone and in-person gatherings. And where my next bit of that is how do we get back in safe community spaces that have been somewhat abandoned?
Mm,
So really thinking about libraries or other community
mm,
centers that we have yet to revitalize. They
yeah.
used to be such beacons of our communities, and
Mm,
I think we
abandoned them.
should, yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And we need reason to go back in.
Yeah.
So this is also my next step is how do we create life story clubs there to give people reasons to engage back in those communities that already have a whole host of support and services and entertainment and fun. And so that's what
And
I'm working
just
on, right?
real estate, right? Real estate
Yes,
that's already
space.
there. I think about this a lot. I mean, when I listen to you, Jennifer, I think you sound like a futurist, and I love that. And then I think we have so much good real estate that's often very affordable or even for free. And it's
Yes.
already there and we're not using it. We must be mad.
We are mad. We've certainly gone mad. And so and sometimes it's just reminding people and giving people a reason to go back into those spaces.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this, especially when I see coffee shops that basically have become libraries, and I think,
Mm,
why aren't we in
so true.
libraries?
Yeah. And why don't
You
we
could
have the
be
coffee in the libraries?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
so interesting to me how we've kind of monetized things that used to just be public access and public good.
Yeah. Jennifer, so what takeaways would you like our listeners to have from your story?
Um, what takeaways? Any takeaway, anything that I said. Mostly I think the small favors thing is big.
Mm, I think, yeah.
I think if people can commit to offering, maybe it's one small favor a week, what incredible and profound good we could have
Mm,
across the board.
yeah.
We could deepen friendships, we could deepen community, something really special. Um, I think about ways that we can be more inclusive, thinking about people, if you look around the room and there is a certain group that isn't in there, think about how you can welcome them, get curious about why they're not already there. That's
Mm,
really big for me. And then I think every day, if we think about creating, going back to being a futurist, I love that. If we think about creating communities and spaces where we want to maybe age in, we could create a reality for older adults today that is more welcoming and hospitable.
yes, and thank you
Yes.
so
Yeah.
much. Dr. Jennifer Wong, you lead so powerfully with your story, with your insights and experiences, with all the academic work you've done so far, and also by just creating those spaces for the elders. And I'm so excited you lead with community so powerfully. It's exactly what is needed. I often think it's the medicine that is needed for us in these times in 2025 and beyond, where we have such a crisis of people feeling isolated and alone and having mental health issues and all of these challenges that are really remedied just by us creating more community and therefore connection.
Thank you so much for having me.